It's terrible. Everyone needs a Baynes.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. There was a huge Wednesday in the NBA, some long-term injury news, some in-game injury news, 12 games to talk about, and then a quick, short, little delightful two-game Thursday slate for DFS. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
All right, let's get to it indeed. We will start with
monstrous line of the night.
It goes today to Kyrie Irving of the Boston Celtics, who was fantastic in a surprise loss to the Phoenix Suns. 29, 5 and 10 for Kyrie, 4 triples, 4 steals and a block, and that legendary efficiency, 10 of 19, 53% from the field, and a perfect 5 of 5 from the line. He has crept himself back into the top 10 discussion. These are the numbers that he was putting up in his first season pre-LeBron back in Cleveland. 23 points per game, 48% shooting, 6.5 assists. But the big improvement here from Kyrie over what he's done the last couple of years is 1.8 steals. He is really right up there in those numbers. The free throws are fantastic. Somehow his free throw attempt rate has actually dropped this season. His usage is down as well, the lowest number it's been in the last 2 years. But that increased steal rate, the massive spike in assists, has really pushed his value right up. He was at 5.1 assists and 1.1 steals last year. He's at 6.4 assists and 1.8 steals. That is a huge, huge difference, and that is what's pushed Kyrie into the top 10 for fantasy, just consistently putting up big numbers. And a guy that you're really happy if you took him at the back end of the second round. If you had any worries about that knee after the playoffs, then you're feeling pretty bloody good about where things are sitting with Kyrie Irving at the moment.
Waiver wire line of the night.
This one goes to Reggie Bullock of the Detroit Pistons. From everything I'm aware, he is one of the best blokes in the NBA, Reggie Bullock, and put up his second consecutive huge game. 33 points, which was a career high, 43 minutes in the overtime victory, 7 triples, and in true Reggie Bullock style, nothing else. 3 rebounds, 1 assist and a steal. The 57% from the field is really nice, 2 of 2 from the line. His last 2 games have been fantastic, and it's pushed him into the top 50 over the last week, but over the course of the season, he still isn't a top 150 player. His usage has really spiked. He's on 16% for the season, but over the last 3 games, he's at 21, and he's shooting 57% from the field. So there's going to be a significant regression there, and of course, he just does nothing else. So those 16 threes that he's hit over the last 3 games, really bumping things up in his value, pushing it sky high at the moment. That's not going to be able to stick. He's going to be able to give you 2 to 2.5 threes a game. He's going to be able to do it relatively efficiently, especially if 3-point percentage is a category in your league. But these last couple of games aren't representative of what Bullock can do continuously. He is a good shooter, no doubt about that. 49% from the field last season. Hasn't been anywhere near that this year, outside of the last 11 games where he is over 50%. So we've got to work out where is he as a shooter. He was 34 his first season, 44, then 42, then all the way to 49 last season. Down to 43 this season, but those last 11 games he spiked at 51%, really starting to bring that number back up. So he's a 14-team league guy. He's a back-end 12-team league guy if you're looking for a source of threes and efficiency. But these performances over the last couple of games, they're unrealistic to be able to expect Bullock to keep those numbers up. The deep leaguer of the night, a guy that everyone is talking about at the moment, and he's a name who's going to be really hot off the waiver wire, even in standard leagues, to be honest, is the Rock DJ, Robbie Williams of the Boston Celtics. Al Horford's out with knee tendonitis, and Aron Baynes broke his hand today. He's going to be out, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks. Shum said 4 weeks. I think we push 4 to 4.5 would be a decent guess. That leaves Vanilla Tice and Bob Williams as the 2 centers. Of course, Marcus Morris was out of this game as well. He'd also play some center, but Williams is putting up astounding numbers. 24 minutes in this game, 8 points, but it's 8 rebounds, 1 steal, and 5 blocks that really gets him, and 4 of 4 from the field. He has averaged so far this season 1.7 blocks in under 10 minutes. And for those of you who don't have a calculator there,
2 plus 2 is 4, minus 1, that's 3, quick maths.
That translates to 6.4 blocks per 36 minutes on a 75% shooting number. Over the last month, he's the 24th ranked player in per 36 fantasy value. Now, we can look at him as an interesting ad. Now, I don't know how long Horford's going to be out with this knee issue. I'd imagine a couple more games. But Williams, when Baynes is gone for the next month, that's fine. So that pushes Williams from the 4th string center to the 3rd string center. Now, if Horford's out, as a 2nd string center, I like Rob Williams. Yeah, he's going to be able to give you 2.5 blocks a game and do it on good field goal percentage. Think Mitchell Robinson, but maybe better. At least for this portion of the season. But if Horford's back and Tice is there, what's he going to get? 10 minutes a game? 11 minutes a game, maybe? Like, Tice wasn't even playing most nights. We'd get Horford and then Baynes, and that was it. That was the center rotation. So they'd run a 2-center rotation majority of the time. Maybe you'd get a couple of Tice cameos. So if Horford's there and Tice is there, then Williams doesn't play. But could Rob Williams take that backup role off Tice? I'd be a little doubtful because his inability to do anything offensively apart from finish putbacks is a limiting factor. But his ability to block shots is absolutely phenomenal, and that field goal percentage boost is a huge thing as well. So if you wanted a short-term boost in those categories, you could look at the Rock DJ as an option, but just be aware that if Horford's back, it pushes him down, and it probably significantly limits what he's going to be able to do. But if there's any games coming up where it's going to be just him and Tice in 20 minutes, that makes a top 100, probably top 80 guy for those games where it's just him and Tice at center. So that could be some short-term value for the Rock DJ. But of course, again, when Horford's back, it's unlikely to see him really put up enough playing time to be a valuable piece. Guys, make sure you are following the Locked On Podcast Network on Twitter and on Instagram at Locked On NBA Net. All of the hosts of the Locked On feed are pushed into one feed, so you get all the breaking news, rotation decisions, coaching dummy. I'm trying to think of the right word. Coaching stupidity. That's the right word. All pushed into one feed. And on Instagram, the biggest stories of the day pushed into the Instagram stories feed. So Locked On NBA Net on Twitter and on Instagram. All right, let's go on to the next award of the day.
Young Gun of the Night.
Man, has there ever been as wild a ride as De'Aaron Fox? Young Gun of the Night to Dud of the Night, back to Young Gun of the Night in his last 3 games. He has been unbelievable this season, and this was another unbelievable performance. 37 minutes, 28 points with 12 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 3 triples, 56% from the field, a weird 56% from the line also. But his numbers have been astonishing. The 36th ranked player this season, the numbers, especially the shooting, are through the roof, and he is a top 15 player over the last 2 weeks on 54% shooting, which is likely to dip back down. And that 48% that he's currently sitting at for the season is also not a number that I anticipate will stick long term there for De'Aaron Fox. But he's clearly outperforming the draft position, which was like 110, 120 as an ADP. I grabbed him in quite a few redraft leagues. I think he's in nearly all of my redraft teams, to be honest. Actually, that's not true. I lie. How many redrafts have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 redraft, 10 redraft teams. Yeah, 11 redraft teams. There you go. And I've got him on 4. That's not a bad percentage of my redraft teams. I didn't know I had so many redraft teams. Got him with those last picks. Cheap auction price, and obviously I'm really happy with how they've been going. That the steal numbers are fantastic. The blocks are a huge effort as well to get those big numbers. He has been one of the most improved players in the entire NBA this season.
I tell a man's not hot.
Old shiplock Daz Collison of the Indiana Pacers. Not a surprise. We talked about this ad nauseum when Victor Oladipo was out there. When Oladipo came back, Collison to drop off. He played 31 minutes, so that's not surprising, but 7, 6, and 4 on 3 of 9 shooting. We've seen in those last couple of games with Oladipo back, he just hasn't had that ability to have the ball in his hands, which is really what pushed his numbers up when Oladipo was sidelined. So I feel pretty confident in saying Collison's a drop guy. He is a top 100 player over the last month. A lot of those games without Oladipo. The last 8 games, he's back outside the top 140. And I think, I think he will be a top 150 player. He is not going to be a top 100 guy. So maybe it's more viable to say he's a 10-team drop, and he can be a 12-team drop depending on how your squad is situated. Because he can get assists. The assists were still there today. Okay steals, okay-ish efficiency, although that's dropped way off for Collison this season. A 40% three-point shooter for 3 consecutive years. He's down at 35% this season. So that could come back up for Daz. He doesn't take many attempts from 3 either. I would say that He's not a 10-teamer, and he's a borderline 12-team league guy, but that could very quickly change. That could really quickly change, I believe, for Collison. I don't think that he needs to be held on to with an iron type grip or anything along those lines. The best net rating, the plus minus goats. The best was Georgie Hill, saw an extended run in today's game, plus 97.3, while the lowest net rating went to MC Hamidou Diallo of the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Stop. Have a time.
A negative 98.8. He's been a bit up and down, Diallo, not really having too much of an impact fantasy-wise. Well, George Hill, easily his best game for the Bucks. Cut into Bledsoe's playing time today. I don't think that's going to necessarily be a regular occurrence. And he is just a deeper league sort of a guy, but nothing for me to really pay attention to, I don't think, with Georgie Hill. Injury news today, we got the news on Goran Dragic. Obviously, that's far from ideal with him being out with that knee surgery. I said it a while ago that I thought that he was in real trouble of being finished as a starter quality NBA player with this knee really bothering him. And he's going to miss about 2 months with this surgery now. I feel pretty comfortable with dropping him in 10, 12, 14 team leagues without IR spots. You can keep him in IR, but I don't think he's a real high upside guy when he comes back. And then the question gets posed, well, now Dragic is out, who's the ad? But in a lot of these situations, Dragic has been out for the last month. He's played, I think, 2 games in the last month. So we've got an idea what this Heat team is in that time, and that should give you an idea where the value is. Plus, now we have to incorporate Dion Waiters back, who was questionable for Thursday's game and has been ruled out now. So we look at these numbers, and Tyler Johnson, he had his own injury issues, but he was the 210th ranked player in that time. You had Derek Jones Jr., the 156th ranked player in that time, fueled by 51% shooting and steals and blocks. Justice Winslow, the 150th ranked player in that time, playing 28 minutes a night. No one there is massively standing out. Probably the biggest beneficiary, to be honest, is Kelly Olynyk. It pushes Winslow to point guard more, opens up more power forward minutes for Kelly Olynyk. So out of Olynyk, Winslow, Jones, and Tyler Johnson, I'm probably grabbing Kelly, to be honest. Second option, it might be Tyler Johnson, who's had a couple of strong games. But again, Waiters is going to come back, and he's probably going to play limited minutes. But that means if he's 10 minutes, they come from somewhere. They got to come from Jones. They got to come from Johnson. And I just don't see Tyler Johnson as a high priority ad, or Winslow. You could take flyers on these guys, but I would prioritize Olynyk over those players. And again, but not high value guys. Dragic, again, has played under 40 minutes in the last month total, 2 games. So we've got an idea of what these guys are able to do. Plus, we've got to add Waiters back into this mix now whenever he comes in. And again, even if it's only 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes that comes off some of these players. And it could be 2 or 3 minutes off each of them. And that cuts their value even further. So there's only 2 top 100 players for the Miami Heat over the last month. And that's Bam Adebayo and Kelly Olynyk. Even Josh Richardson's outside the top 120 because his shooting's been so poor. But these other guys, like Winslow, is shooting 44%. It's still 100 from 3, and still the 150th ranked guy. So I wouldn't be blowing my entire load on say a Winslow or a Tyler Johnson in a fab auction or anything along those lines. The other news is Zach LaVine. I talked about this the other day about how I was a little bit concerned with LaVine having that pop in his ankle, and he missed a couple of games, and Chicago with literally the shittest medicals. And I apologize. If any Chicago medical staff people listen to this podcast, I apologize. Send me a message and tell me what the hell is going on over there. But they've got the worst medical staff in the NBA. LaVine's out for the next 2 to 4 weeks, which apparently now it's been some confusion because nobody talks to anybody over there. They don't know their ass from their elbow a lot of the time. Boylan said it was 2 to 4 weeks from today, and then it was clarified later that it's 2 to 4 weeks from the original injury, which was about a week ago. So maybe we're looking at 1 to 3 weeks for LaVine. There is absolutely no reason to push him back. He claims it's got nothing to do with minutes load. That's fine. Maybe it doesn't, but he's playing a shitload plus 2.5 hour practices and wind sprints and all that sort of stuff. Does make it somewhat questionable in terms of load on a guy with coming off an ACL injury. But LaVine is out for the next couple of weeks. Now, Ryan Archer-Jacquino retains some 14 to 16 team league value. You get Cameron Payne as a 20 team league guy. Big Shaq Harrison.
Big Shaq.
He gets some value, and they fill in those minutes there. but none of those really appeal as 12-team league guys. Make sure Chris Dunn's added. He's available in 21% of Yahoo leagues. Apparently, that shouldn't be the case. Make sure he is a must-roster player in every 10-team league and higher, and probably 8-team leagues, to be honest. But yeah, LaVine out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. Aron Baynes, we talked about it already, out for the next 4 weeks, maybe 4 to 6 with that broken hand. That's bad news for the Celtics and bad news for Baynes. While John Simmons suffered an ankle injury for the Orlando Magic today. He wasn't able to continue during the game. With him out, it gives minutes to guys like Wes Iwundu and a little bit of a boost to Johnny Isaac. But I still think Isaac's a 12-team league regardless of Simo's status. It also gives a little bit of a boost to Terry Ross as well. Just solidifies his value. If you have a company that's looking for a new way to reach customers, you could have yourself mentioned right now. Podcast listeners are 60% more likely to interact with the sponsors that they hear on their favorite podcasts. Our demographic is 98% male, higher educated, and higher earning than your traditional media audiences. So email me at redrockfantasybasketball@gmail.com if you are interested in having your company sponsor this show. All right, let's go into these games. There are absolutely shitloads of them. 12-game day in the NBA. Just absolutely no need for these sort of days in the NBA if we're going to be honest. The first game of the day was the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets win 110-99. Larry Nance Jr. Turns out he's good. Who knew? Everyone apart from Larry Drew apparently. 10, 15, and 7, 2 steals and a block. He is absolutely a must-roster player. I don't know what Drew's going to do to completely dick us around when Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love come back, as I said in the podcast a couple of days ago. But add him, and let's figure this shit out later on, because with how he is playing and the playmaking.
A surprise, to be sure, but it worked.
His ability to generate assists is fantastic, and I didn't really expect to see that from Nance this season, and he has been awesome. This is what we hope for him. This is why I was looking at drafting him in tons of leagues, and then when you see a coach have 7 big men go down and they still play him 19 minutes, you sort of give up. And you go, well, I know what's right. I know who the better option here is, and it's not Channing Frye. But if this bloke can't see that through every single injury, then I don't know. But eventually, the light ticked on for Larry Drew, and here we are, and Larry Nance is putting up the big numbers. Jerome Blossom game, man, he looks all right, this guy. 15 points in 23 minutes, more just a deeper league guy, but interesting enough, while Alec Burks had his second strong game, the 6 assists and 3 blocks are probably a little bit high to expect from Burksy as we move forward, but he was good, then he was terrible, and now he's back to being good again. He's more of a 14-team league player. Chetty Osman, I think he's a 14-teamer at this point, while Jordy Clarkson returned from his one game off for 20 points on inefficient shooting. And let's talk about the old Colin Sexton, the Padawan. 27 minutes, 11, 3 and 3. Foul trouble limited him, but let's be honest, he's just not a good player. He's got so far to go to become a capable NBA point guard, and I do fear that he's going to be a point guard like a Reggie Jackson maybe, a guy who can be a starter but never be an upper echelon fantasy guy. That's how I view Sexo. For the Hornets, good to see Kemba Walker back. Started out a bit shaky, but ended up well. 30 points with 6 assists and 2 steals, while Big Marvin Williams, 18 and 10 in 38 minutes for Marv. The minutes are a bit of a roller coaster for Williams. They do go up and down. If he's playing 38 tonight, he's a must-roster guy. If he plays 25, then he's probably not. And this was a game where Malik Monk was out of the rotation. We got a combined 7 minutes out of Bill Hernan-Gomez and Frank Kaminsky, and that sort of shit is hard to predict or hard to expect on a regular basis. So Marvin is fine for 12 teamers. He's fine to have him, but there was a stretch before he got hurt in the season when he wasn't even putting up top 180 numbers. And that's the sort of thing we've got to look for with that playing time. Kid Gilchrist had a nice 2 steal and 2 block game, while Jeremy Lamb, good to see him back on track, 18, 12, and 5, and Batum, a 12, 3, and 2. I think Batum's a real fringe 12-team league player. Let's go on to the next game. Who is it? It is the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers win 131-109. Timmy Hardaway was back after resting that one game for plantar fasciitis. I think that Timmy is going to miss some more games as we move forward here. 27, 3 and 5 with 2 steals. So he was back in his business and putting up those good numbers. But I just do worry a little bit while Enes Kanter had 15 and 6. Noah Vonleh, just another weird stat line, 6, 10 and 5. He's had big man assists through the roof this season, really unexpectedly, and 2 blocks for Vonleh. He's very Marvin Williams-ish to me in terms of where his value lies. While Damo Dotson returned, he had 14 points on 55% shooting. Just think of him as a worse Reggie Bullock. That's the sort of guy he can be, an efficient shooter who does pretty much nothing else outside of score. The Fort, Kevin Knox, or as we call him, Big Colin Sexton, 21-6 with 3 threes and no other numbers. At least he hit his free throws. He's been traveling at about 55% from the line. I think I'd rather have him than Sexton in a 12-team league, but both of them suffer from the same issue that they can be scoring guys. And Knox has an ability, I think, to score more points than Sexton without doing a huge amount else. Mario Hezonja's got 1 foot out of the rotation, only 4 minutes here as Lance Thomas is back with a vengeance, 17 minutes for Tomo. And Emmanuel Mudiay. Now, the encouraging thing here with Manny is 32 minutes. Otherwise, this looks very much like Denver Emmanuel Mudiay. 11, 3, and 5 on 25% from the field and 50% from the line. Just absolutely abominable percentage numbers. But the fact that he shot as poorly as he did, and Trey Burke wasn't in the rotation at all, it gives you some level of pause or level of confidence, I guess, in Mudiay as a 12-team league guy, and that's where I believe that he is. For the Sixers, Butler had 24-4 with 3 steals. Embiid had 24-10, and Simmons had a very low-end triple-double, 13, 11, and 10. And my man, Landry Shamet, the three-point stream specialist, he's had 2 threes or more in 5 of his last 6 games. He had 4 of them here for 17 points. He gives you nothing apart from those threes, and that can be valuable. Timothy John McConnell adding the steals. He's a steals specialist, and Mike Muscala was okay, while JJ Redick had a bit of a quieter night in this blowout victory. Let's move on to the next game, the San Antonio Spurs. Now, the San Antonio Spurs, I've shit on them a little bit this season. I've been disappointed with them, but quietly, and I'm not sure how often this has been mentioned, and I'm going to mention it now. So if you feel like it, tweet this out. But the San Antonio Spurs, over the last 7 games, have won 6. And that's not amazing. Their one loss was one they should have won against the Chicago Bulls. So the 6 out of 7, 6-1. All 6 of those victories have been by at least 13 points, and their last 4 victories have been by at least 25 points. So their last 4 games, they beat the Suns by 25, the Clippers by 38, they lost to the Bulls by 5, they beat the Sixers by 27, and the Magic by 39. They are pounding the shit out of teams at the moment, and I don't think it's really getting noticed. I'm sure Spurs fans are aware. We panicked a lot about LaMarcus Aldridge's efficiency. It's back. He had 20 points on 9 shots. That's obviously elite. While Brynnie Forbes had a nice night, 17 points on 7 of 8 shooting. We know that the big night from Bryn Forbes, just call him short Justin Jackson, that comes on like 80% shooting, an unreliable number. Derek White moved back into the starting lineup. I just want to watch this guy consistently. 9 points with 6 assists. He had another block. That's a real key to his value, but he's not at 12-team or 14-team league value yet. If you can lock in at 31 a night, I'd take a flyer, but he goes from 17 to 26 to 34 to 17 to minus 242 minutes. There's no way of being able to get any consistency out of Derek White in his playing time. Davis Bertans went off last game. He only played 15 minutes here, so really hard to get value there, while Rudy Gay kept the shooting up somehow, 67%, 14 and 6 in 23 minutes. So a little bit of a quieter game, but still that elite efficiency has been fantastic. Aaron Gordon can't get any sort of elite efficiency. He was 12, 9 and 7 on 40%, while DJ Augustin had been struggling a little bit here, but bounced back with 17 points and 3 triples. He is a real 14-teamer, but fringe 12er. No Nick Vucevic in this game. Out for the birth of his child, Mo Bamba stepped in.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
He had a game very similar to Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, actually. 2 steals and 2 blocks with 8 rebounds and 7 points. You know, one of those blocks streamers. Do you want him? Do you want the Rock DJ Robbie Williams? Do you want Mitchell Robinson? 3 rookie centers who can be a 2 block per game sort of a guy. Williams obviously more just short term, but I'm not adding Bumba in 12-team leagues in the hope that now he's locked in as a starting center, because that's not happening. Johnny Isaac, 10 and 5. I know if you want to drop him, go ahead. I wouldn't personally, but I understand the frustrations. While Fournier had 12 points in 25 minutes, but a lot of these minutes were reduced because of the absolute smacking that they copped from the San Antonio Spurs. Next up, the Phoenix Suns on a 4-game winning streak now. Yes, 111 to 103. I believe they've won all the games since Devin Booker's return. And this was a positive one for DeAndre Ayton. I thought it would be a tough matchup for him against the Celtics. Well, it wasn't. He played 32 minutes and had 23 and 18. Still, the blocks are an issue, but him playing 32 minutes or him playing 28 minutes is probably the difference between being a top 40 player or a top 65 player. And his numbers had been pushed well down in recent games because of the play of Rashawn Holmes and the lack of effort from Ayton. But this is a big, big game. Well, Devin Booker had 25, 5 and 8 with 2 blocks and a steal. Not often you get those defensive numbers from Booker, so take that and be happy with it. Joshy Jackson. Now, actually, it's good to get an idea here because this is Kelly Oubre's first game. The guy that copped it the most was DeAnthony Melton. 16 minutes for Melton. And it wasn't because Jamal Crawford played 25 minutes. So to me, we're going to see a lot more point Booker. Melton might continue to start 20-minute zone. I think you get rid of him in 12 teamers. He had 5 assists and a steal in 16 minutes. Oubre played 26. McCall Bridges played 33. Joshy Jackson played 28. Jackson had 11 and 5. Oubre had 13 and 6 with 2 blocks, and Bridges had 9 and 7. I think all these guys are going to be in that 120 to 170 type of a range. Who do I prioritize? It's probably Oubre, but none of them really overly excite me massively. And there's going to be nights where one outperforms the other, and I don't think any of them are in any real danger of cracking the top 100, depending on how the rotation shakes out. 6 and 5 for Rashawn Holmes in only 16 minutes. This is the worry, of course. If Ayton pushes over 30 minutes, he just doesn't get enough playing time to be a 12-team league guy. Onto the Celtics, there was no Horford or Marcus Morris, but let's talk about the other Marcus, who has been unbelievable. And people will talk about Marcus Smart, and they give him shit, and they always say he's a terrible offensive player, and that couldn't be a bigger lie. He is a terrible shooter, but he's a bloody good offensive player, and you see that every time he plays, the offenses are good, he just can't shoot. And what he's been able to do this season, and something I've criticized guys like Josh Smith for in the past, have some self-awareness. If you know you can't shoot, stop it. And his usage has gone from 20% down to under 14%. The shooting's still not great, 33% from 3 and 39% from the field, but when you're not taking them, then you're not hurting as much. He is, amazingly, over the last month, Marcus Smart, a top 50 player, despite shooting 42%, because he's getting assists, he's getting big steals, and he is an absolutely a 12-team league guy. I don't think Jaylen Brown's getting back into the starting lineup. This is anomalous, the 32 minutes and 12, 4 and 5 with 4 steals for Smart, but he is such a good player. Jason Tatum, 18 and 8 with 4 blocks. That's weird, the 4 blocks there. While Gordo Hayward, 10, 5 and 4, 1 steal, 2 blocks, contributing right across the box. Well, his usage is significantly down this season, and that's the real worry there with him. While Jaylen Brown had 6 points in 24 minutes. He had that nice little run when he returned from his back injury. That's done. He's a 14 to 16 team league guy, really, at best. Let's go on to the next game. We've got the Indiana Pacers and the Toronto Raptors. Miles Turner, 14 rebounds and 5 blocks. I don't know what spiked this guy off, but his rebounding and block numbers are absolutely through the roof, and he's been fantastic. And it was good for Bojan Bogdanovic to bounce back as well. 18 and 5 with 3 triples. Good to see him get those numbers even with Oladipo around. Thad Young's numbers have cooled off a bit. A 1-1 with 11, 5 and 3. That's still useful, and that's still 12-teamer, but it's not the same big numbers he was putting up before. Oladipo had 20 points with 4 assists. Not a lot else, and he's getting very dangerously close to Russell Westbrook territory in that his free throws are a considerable issue. They're not good this year, and I don't know why he's all of a sudden turned into a poor free throw shooter. Wasn't the greatest Domantas Sabonis night, a pretty empty 12 and 10. On to the Raptors, no Serge Ibaka or Kyle Lowry, but Pascal Siakam returned. 17 and 7, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, a huge performance from Siakam, while the fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
28, 10 and 6 with 4 steals. The only thing that really kept him back from a huge line was the fact that he went 6 of 9 from the line, but huge performance. While the Jedi, OG Anunoby.
Hello there.
We haven't seen that from him from a while. 2 threes, 2 steals, and a block. I still have faith in him. It appears Siakam has comfortably overtaken him in terms of prospects, but I still believe in Anunoby. It's going to take a couple of years to get there, but I do believe he'll be a top 100 fantasy player. Greggy Munro.
As Greg runs in, we realise this could get dangerous.
He made the start with Valanciunas and Ibaka both out. 22 minutes, 13 and 8. I think that's almost best case scenario for Munro, and that's more 14 to 16 team leagues, of course. When Ibaka comes back, he probably won't play that much. While Chris Boucher had 3 blocks. He's been a shot blocking machine in the G League and translated that to the NBA, but struggles in a lot of other areas. Freddie VanVleet had 11 with 3 threes, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Just narrowly missed the Richie Beno. The shooting was atrocious from VanVleet, just 24%, and he goes back to a limited role when Lowry returns it. And shout out to Norman Powell, who returned from that shoulder injury back into the rotation, actually ahead of CJ Miles, which was interesting. Next up, the Rockets get the big blowout victory over the Washington Wizards, 136-118. Johnny Wall, 18, 4 and 12 in 39 minutes, while Trevor Ariza had his second big game in a row, 15, 6 and 3 with the 3 steals. Now, the steals are through the roof. He's averaging 4.5 in his second Wizards tenure, and that's not going to continue. But for now, he looks more comfortable. He's in a larger role, as weird as it is, on a better team in Washington versus Phoenix, and I think he's a must-add 12-team league and probably 10-teamer. Tommy Bryant played 24 minutes, 12 and 4 with 2 triples and a block. This is why I like him. The blocks and the threes combination. I don't think he's a 12-teamer. He's a 16 to 18 team league guy. While Chasen Randall played 8 minutes in his second game. And Markieff Morris, man, he was a guy that was putting up must-add numbers. Not so much anymore. 5 and 5 in 24 minutes. I think you can move on from him. While Jeff Green.
My name is Jeff.
12 and 3 in his 26 minutes, replacing Otto Porter. He has value as long as Porter is out, but that's really about it. On to the Rockets, Jimmy Harden, 35, 3 and 9, while Chris Paul, finally the shots fell, 64% for Paul, 21, 2 and 8, and PJ Tucker with the out-of-nowhere double-double, 11 and 11 with 4 assists, and Capella had 20 and 12. Gerald Green, he took the mantle of random bench guy to hit threes, 12 points with 4 triples, while Daniel House also hit 2 threes. Both of those guys have streaming upside-ish type value, while Marquise Chris and Brandon Knight played 4 and 6 minutes respectively. Unlikely those guys are going to have too much of an impact at all this season. Next up, the Milwaukee Bucks 123, the New Orleans Pelicans 115. Not only were the Pelicans without Mirotic and Randall, but Anthony Davis had to leave the game, go drop a few turds off in the toilet because he was dealing with a stomach illness. He still played 29 minutes and had 27 and 11 with 2 steals, 3 blocks, and 4 triples because he is absolutely ridiculous. While Drew Holiday had 25, 5 and 12, 5 triples, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Huge numbers there. Darius Miller got the start for Randall, who was starting for Mirotic. 37 minutes for Miller. 20 points with 6 triples. That's what he is good for. It can be a 3-point streaming, shooting sort of a guy. Well, I've got to give a shout out to Jahlil Okafor because I've shit on Okafor a lot. And I say this quite often, even though people listen to this and say, Josh, you never admit when you're wrong. I feel that couldn't be further from the truth. Jeez, I've forgotten how to speak. Okafor's been shit. We know that. But he was bloody good in this game. 17 points in 13 minutes, 3 rebounds, and even 2 blocks. I believe one of them he blocked Giannis at the rim. Something which he'd really, really lacked. Got to the line. This is like the idealized version of Okafor. What people were talking about him coming into the NBA. He can score. He's going to get some blocks. He's going to be super efficient. He's going to get to the line. We thought, shit, this guy's going to be good. But he wasn't. He had a key role in this game. Of course, when Randall and Mirotic come back, he won't, but that was encouraging to see. Etuan Moore, no, you don't have him in 12-team leagues. Well, Timmy Frazier, I think the ride's over there, 2, 5 and 3 in 24 minutes. 24 minutes actually. Peyton's not that far away. While I'm really disappointed in Shek Diallo with no Mirotic, no Randall, and then a shitty pantsed Davis, he still only played 6 minutes. That's really disappointing. For the Bucks, Yanni had 25, 8 and 8, while George Hill, I mentioned earlier, 29 minutes for Hilly. 11, 2 and 1 with 3 steals, while Bledsoe only played the 24 minutes. Now, this to me is the absolute go and buy low on Eric Bledsoe, because when Hill was traded, a lot of people panicked about Bledsoe. They panicked about him at the start of the season. He's just one of those easily panicked players. So if whoever's got him thinks, oh no, George Hill's taking his minutes, go throw a real low offer at whoever has Bledsoe. Now, if you look across at some of the other minutes, Brogo only played 26 minutes. Brook Lopez only played 20 minutes. It was Budenholzer just mixing and matching with things and changing things around. I'm not overly worried about Bledsoe. I'm not really worried at all about Bledsoe's minutes, but somebody might be if they're not looking into it. Also, shout out again, another guy who I haven't been impressed with last season, DJ Wilson, his second strong game, replacing Ersan Ilyasova, 24 minutes, 9 and 10. If he can turn into a rotation player, that makes the Bucks all the more better over the next couple of seasons, because he looked like a guy that you should probably decline his third-year rookie option, although generally I wouldn't recommend ever doing that, especially with non-lottery picks or non-top 10 picks, but he was shitful last season. But picking it up at the moment, I still do worry about his modern NBA fit, but blocking shots, hitting threes, rebounding at a strong rate, that was a really encouraging thing from DJ Wilson in this game. Next up, we look at the Detroit Pistons overtime victory over the Minnesota Timberwolves, 129-123. Blakey Griffin had 34, 8 and 4, while Drummond had 16 and 16. And he's an official punt free throw guy. You can't get away from it now. Another shit night there, 5 of 9 from the line, while Reggie Jackson had 24, 2 and 6. The Duck, Luke Kennard, 19 minutes. He just isn't going to play enough at this point. I really like the Duck. In 30 minutes a night, I'd be all over him in 12-team leagues, but Langston Galloway's getting playing time, Jose Calderon, Stan Johnson, and this is without Ish Smith and without the little dog Glenn Robinson, and that worries me about Kennard. I still would grab him in 20-teamers and 18-teamers, but anything shallow, I'm a bit hesitant on with him. And then you've got the Shark, Bruce Brown. Baby Shark, 17 minutes, 4 and 5. Decent enough role there. I really do like him long term. I like Kennard more than him long term, But I could see the Duck and the Shark manning the 2 and the 3 position for Detroit in a couple of years' time and putting up solid top 150 fantasy numbers. For the Timberwolves, Jeff Teague was out.
My name is Jeff.
So Derrick Rose had a huge game.
Oh my.
33 points, 7 assists, 48% shooting. The threes weren't quite there, but he has been obviously really impressive this season and continues to be a must-roster guy, while Bob Covington had 22 and 6 with 5 triples. And I think we've got to pay attention to Dario Saric now. Now, when the trade went down, I thought Saric was clearly the better player than Taj Gibson, as nearly everyone with eyes did, but Tom Thibodeau, of course, he had to let his balding son play those minutes in Taj Gibson. But gradually we're seeing even the notoriously inflexible Tom Thibodeau just dropping Taj's minutes down. Only 22 here. He played 17 each of the last 2, and Saric played 32, had 15 and 6 with 2 triples. If he's getting 30 a night, it's a better situation for him here in Minnesota than in Philadelphia, and I'd be grabbing him in 12-team leagues. Wiggins had 16 and 6 with 3 steals, one of his better performances despite the shooting, while Townsy had 16 and 8 with 3 blocks. Getting those blocks continue to come. Josh Okogie, 31 minutes for Okogie, so that's massive. 7 and 6. He's not ready to be a regular fantasy contributor or even he's not even going to be a regular guy in terms of getting minutes in the NBA. The Brooklyn Nets win their 7th in a row. What is going on? At the start of the season, I had Kenny Atkinson in my top 3 for coach of the year, and people pissed on that idea. If they get into the playoffs, losing their best player, then he is in that conversation. 96-93. Now, it's only against the Chicago Bulls. But Spencer Dinwiddie, 27, 6 and 3 with 2 steals and 4 triples. Another monster. His efficiency is absolutely through the roof this season. While Jarrett Allen, the people who wanted to drop him will probably be rethinking that after today. 16 and 12. But remember, big men against the Bulls, it's always a good time. Rowdy Rodion's Karooks, 23 minutes for him, 8 and 4 with a steal and a block. I thought inexplicably that Kenny Atkinson started Shabazz Napier the second half over Rowdy. I've got no idea why he did it, because Karooks has been playing really, really well. I still like him as just a deeper league guy, while Smoke and Joe Harris had 11, 4 and 4 with 3 triples, enough to keep him as a 12-team league guy. After me getting back, not on board with Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, me thinking, all right, well, there's something there. He shit the bed. 9 and 3 in 28 minutes, couldn't shoot. And this is why I always say that he's a low upside guy. There's some of these numbers look okay, but I just don't see the top 100 rest of season value. While D'Angelo Russell wasn't his best game, 13, 3 and 3. On the Bulls, Chrissy Dunn, 24, 4 and 6 with 2 steals, 52%. But I feel pretty confident in saying Jim Boylan is by far the worst coach in the NBA. I don't understand any of this shot distribution. Larry Markkinen takes 6 shots in a game with Zach LaVine out, 8 and 6 in 33 minutes. That's just nonsense. Punch Bob Shiplock took 18. He is an offensive black hole. I do not think he's a good player. He can put up numbers, 16 and 11, but this is just a real Punch Bob game. Just 39% usage. Like, calm down, Bobby. Who do you think you are? But not say that too loud. A steal and a block. But yeah, shout out to Bob. You know, the punching aside, he was great over the offseason. He went to that Locked On Bulls bowling event when he hosted it along with them, and that was fantastic. So yeah, you've always got to shout out the guys when they do something good, apart from breaking their teammates' face or taking every shot that comes into their hands. But Portis is a back-end 12-team league guy. Arch had 10 points in his 23 minutes. He's up and down, while Big Shaq Harrison, another 2 steals. Now that he is in the rotation with LaVine out, he has got some 16-team league value. While Justin Holiday, not a great scoring night, but 2 blocks, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 3. He is a 12-team league guy. I hate the way that Jim Boylan managed Wendell Carter Jr. He played him the entire first quarter and then didn't play him again for the next 10 minutes and then closed him out for 2 minutes in that first half. So ended up with just 24 minutes. 9 and 5 with a steal and a block. Now, he ended with 4 fouls, but he had just 1 foul in that first half. There's no reason he shouldn't be getting 16 first half minutes on a team as shitful as the Chicago Bulls, who he's clearly their best defender. It's nonsense coaching. Like, what kind of a rotation is that? I think the biggest problem is not even going to be Carter's foul trouble. It's going to be Boylan's terrible coaching. I'm still holding him, but yeah, yikes, that wasn't good. The next game we look at, the Utah Jazz and the Golden State Warriors. The Jazz win 108-103. Steph had 32, Durant had 30, and Clay had a miserable 12 and 6 on 25% shooting. The 3 steals and a block are really nice from Thompson, and they've been improving lately. But that efficiency not quite there. Draymond had 8 and 12 in his 37, and very little else to really talk about. I think Kevon Looney, who could have been a back-end 12-team league guy, that's toast. We're getting a lot more Eunice Jerebko, who hit another 2 threes as an 18-team league player, and Andre Iguodala under 20 minutes for each of the last 2 games. For the Jazz, Gobert had 17 and 15 with 4 blocks, and good to see Jingle and Joe Ingles get it together. 23 and 3 with 2 steals and 4 triples. I talked about him as a buy low guy. You're not going to be able to buy low after this performance, but good to see him back on track. Well, Jay Crowder, he was always going to play more minutes than Favors. Now, I thought he would start, but he didn't. He played 31 minutes, 18 and 11 with 5 triples. I think he's more 14 than 12 team, while Favors had 12 and 9 in his 26. The Don, just absolutely atrocious for Donovan Mitchell shooting-wise. 26 shot attempts, 19%. He had 17, 5 and 6 with 2 steals and a block, so the counting stats are fine. But that efficiency is an absolute disaster, and even went 5 of 7 from the line. Just really not good. While Ravishing Rick had just the 3 points, missed all 8 of his shots, but 5 rebounds and 10 assists. Back to the old Minnesota days of big assists and no scoring. Not great, but they still get the victory, which is impressive. Next up, we look at the Oklahoma City Thunder blowing out the Sacramento Kings on the road, 132-113. Paul George, 43, 12 and 7 with 4 triples. I put a poll up on Twitter today, and if you want, it's still active for the next however long you listen to this. Who is Paul George the Thunder's best player? At the time of me recording this, it's about 75% in favor. So go and vote there if you've got a different opinion. He is unbelievable. A top 10 fantasy guy, top 5 fantasy guy, 43, 12 and 7. Steve Adams had 20 and 23 with 2 steals and hit all 4 of his free throws, while Westbrook had 19, 11 and 17 with 6 steals and was 2 of 7 from the line. You are punting free throws with Westbrook. He's just a bad free throw shooter now, and I cannot explain it. This is absolutely wild when you look at team leaders in categories for the Thunder for today's game. The leader in points was Paul George with 43, Adams with rebounds, 23, Westbrook with assists, 17, and Westbrook with steals with 6. Like, they are sky-high numbers all in the one game with a 43-point performer, a 23 rebounder, a 17 assist guy, and a 6 steal guy. That is ridiculous. Even Jeremy Grant chimed in with 22 points on 11 shots with a block, but weirdly only the 2 rebounds, and hit 2 threes. He's a back-end 12-team league guy. They were without Dennis Schroeder and without Fat Face Ray Felton, who were both suspended after that Bulls thing. We saw, I thought Westbrook could play a lot more, but he didn't need to, given the nature of the blowout victory. Budrick Hield, a career-high 37 points, 7 triples, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals. He has elevated his game this season. I was big on him as a mid-round guy, but he's exceeding my expectations as well. Talked about Foxy already. Well, Willie Cauley-Stein. Now, Cauley-Stein's been okay, 13, 7 and 4 with 2 steals, but I've never heard a bloke, apart from Isaiah Thomas, talk about money as much as what Cauley-Stein does, about his only motivation is to get a contract. So I worry about contract year performances, and his numbers haven't really been that improved this year. But I look at him more as the other way. Like, not that you got to have him because he's in a contract year, because I've proven that time and time again about that there's no actual real difference in contract year players. But I worry about him next year when he gets the money. Does he just come in like looking like fat bastard from Austin Powers? That's what I worry about with Cauley-Stein, who apparently can't block a shot anymore either. I think Darren Fox has more blocks than him this season. Justin Jackson started with Iman Shumpert and Bogdan Bogdanovic out, 10 points in 37 minutes, while Nemanja Bjelica 10 and 6 in 23 minutes. His value, as I mentioned, it's just tied with him shooting 55% from the field. If he doesn't, then he's not a 12-team league guy. If he does, then he is. He didn't today, so he's not. It feels as simple as that. The last game of the night, we had the Portland Trailblazers beating the Memphis Grizzlies 99-92. Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., 29 minutes, 16 and 5, 3 blocks and 2 triples. I don't like the way Bickerstaff is handling him. He should be playing him more. He did have 4 fouls, but I think it was Chris Harrington that pointed out, Jackson's fouled out twice this season. Just play him. Let him foul out. What are you saving him for all this time? I think the amount of times that he would foul out in 20 minutes versus the amount of time you've kept him to 24 minutes so he doesn't foul out, you're losing 5 minutes of playing time in 15 games. I think it's a nonsense strategy. Kyle Anderson, he is available in 40% of leagues. I have no idea why. He needs to be rostered in all 12-team leagues. 15, 5 and 3, 4 steals and a block. Grab him. And it's him and Larry Nance, 2 of the guys I was big on heading into the season, who were slow. And I thought, man, do I not know what I'm talking about? And the answer is yes, I can hear you all saying. But they're cranking it up now. And this is exactly what I expected from these players. I'm glad it's coming. Mike Conley back from his hamstring absence, 23, 4 and 6. While JaMychal Green, 4 points with 2 blocks in 21 minutes. This is why I worry about Green, is that when Jackson gets rolling, there's just not enough playing time for him. Even in a game with both Omri Caspi and Joakim Noah out, he still played 21 minutes. He just isn't that good, and I don't think that there's any upside in him in 12 teams. and I think you're better off streaming that spot. Also, interestingly, Marshawn Brooks out of the rotation. Javon Carter, has he earned that spot now? I guess we'll see. A weird performance from the Blazers. Myers Leonard, 27 minutes, 12 and 8 with a block, while Yusuf Nurkic played just the 21 minutes. I think we can just chalk that one up to a bit of an anomaly. It was a weird game again. This minutes reduced for many players like the Chief Al-Farouq Aminu.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
He played just 22 minutes and had 3 points. That's the Chief that we know, 0 of 2 from the field. While CJ McCollum, only 30 minutes, 11 points on 16 shots. So really weird performances. Mo Harkless, 9 points in 22. He's not quite there as a 12-team league guy. And as I mentioned, that efficiency, which was at like 58% over the last week or so, was never going to be able to stick. And that was, insane. He shot 75% today. It's not going to be able to stick. So I don't think that he's a 12-team league guy just at this point. All right, that'll do it for all of the action from what day was it? Wednesday. That's the day. Wednesday in the NBA. So let's now talk some DFS by going over or starting with the perfect lineups on DraftKings. De'Aaron Foxy Fox, Reggie Bullock, Bud Hield, Paul George, Steve Adams, Derrick Rose, Larry Nance Jr., and PJ Tucker for a total of $415. That costs the full $50,000. And on FanDuel, Rose, Fox, Drew Holiday, Hield, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Paul George, Nance, Myers Leonard, and Steven Adams for a total of $442.1. And of course, that cost $59,800 dues. All right, let's look at Thursday's game. It's a terrible DFS slate, let's be honest. 2 games are always terrible to look at, but we'll go through it. We're going to be focusing on DraftKings pricing for today, or for Thursday's games. The first game is the Houston Rockets taking on the Miami Heat. The Rockets on a back-to-back after dismantling the Washington Wizards on Wednesday. The Rockets are favored by 3 points, and the total is 208.5. I've got a note here saying, could Dion Waiters return? But he has, at this point, he's listed as out. He was initially listed as questionable, but now he's been downgraded to out. So it looks like his return is going to be coming soon. As I mentioned, Goran Dragic is going to be out for a considerable amount of time with that knee injury. So let's look at this game. Point guard Chris Paul had a strong performance against the Wizards. I've been talking about how the shot just isn't falling, and eventually it's going to fall. Well, it did fall, and it was a pretty strong game from Paul in limited minutes. He's at 8,200, and there aren't many better high-end guys on the slate at that sort of a price anyway. On DraftKings for Thursday. So I do like Paul quite a bit here. Jim Harden at 11.6. It is a significant price. Again, on a limited slate, having to find some of those low-price guys in to chip in around him. But you can't go wrong with what Harden's doing. He's putting up big numbers pretty much every game, a 65-point average over his last 5. On the Miami side of things, Tyler Johnson's at 5,100. I think that price is probably a little bit elevated for Jono. I'd end up fading him, Brandon Knight, Dwayne Wade. Wadey would be okay, but 5,900 is probably a little bit too high as well. Eric Gordon's at 46. Played okay against Washington, but still not reliable and really just a GPP guy, while Joshie Richardson at 6,800. Happy to go in with Josh here. Again, limited options on this slate. Got it back on track last game with 34 points, and that's about the level that he needs to be at. Gerald Green is just a hot streak type of a guy, while Scooter Magruder is doing absolutely nothing at the moment. For the Wings, PJ Tucker at 37. Massive game for him against Washington. That price makes him an ideal guy to try and get those high-priced guys in like Harden. He's averaging 28 over his last 3, and at 3,700, that is a tremendous return on investment. So I do like getting Tucker in there. You got James Johnson at 36, who's done nothing pretty much all season, while Justice Winslow, who will likely get the point guard duties again. But remember, Dragic hasn't been playing, and Winslow has averaged 13 points over the last 3 games in 23 minutes. Now, he is dealing with an ankle injury. He is questionable for this game, so there's an element of risk there. He'd just be a GPP sort of a play. If he is out, that does boost the value for someone like Tyler Johnson, who at 5,100 would then become a strong play if Justice is actually sidelined. The big man, Bam Adebayo, is at 5,000.
Bam! 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 Bam!
With Whiteside in playing and starting, Whiteside or Adebayo's upside is pretty limited. And while you might think that the matchup against the Rockets isn't necessarily good enough for Hassan, the last 3 times he's played against Houston, Whiteside has averaged 32 minutes and 46 DraftKings points. So that sort of flies in the face of that conventional wisdom. Whiteside's only been playing 23 or 24 a night, so Bam could be a GPP guy. He's giving you 23 a game over the last 3 with Whiteside back in 26 minutes, more minutes than Whiteside there again. But is the upside really high enough? I think you can consider him an option. Kelly Olynyk I do like at 4,700. He's been getting that boost, and if Winslow is out, I like Olynyk even more at that price. Last game was a bit of a stinker for Kelly, but I do think he can bring that value back. While Capella at 8,000, I absolutely love that. And Whiteside at 7,000, well, recent form would indicate that's a good play. He actually had 39 in his last outing as well. I just don't know if I can trust it. I think I'd go more tournament with Whiteside, and I'd rather spend the extra $1,000 and take Clint Capella at this point. Over on FanDuel, I like Paul and Richardson over there. I think Wade and Capella and Olynyk and Harden all have value for cash. Gordon, James Johnson is an interesting GPP guy, just given the limits on FanDuel in terms of low price guys. And Whiteside at 8,000. It's pretty expensive, but he is that GPP guy again, averaging 45 FanDuel points the last 3 times against the Houston Rockets. The second game of the day, the Dallas Mavericks and the LA Clippers. The Clippers are favored by 3. The total is 219. The Clippers are struggling at the moment. There's a fair bit of injury news we need to look at here. Lou Williams has been upgraded to questionable for the Clippers, while the table Montrezl Harrell is probable. While for the Mavericks, Dennis Smith Jr. and Maxi Kleber are both questionable. Dirk and JJ Barea are both probable. So I guess if Lou is out, we get a boost for Patrick Beverley, a boost for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If Smith is out, it's a boost for Doncic. It's a boost for Finney Smith and a boost for Brunson. And if Kleber is out, it's not really going to impact too much. Maybe a little bit for Dwight Powell. But that's not going to have too much of a DFS impact. At point guard, Beverly's at 4,300. He dropped a big 36-pointer and has been playing. He's actually been playing pretty well with Williams out. If Lou is sidelined, I like Beverly at that 4,300 mark, and I like Shea at 5,200 as well. Both of those guys in play. As for Williams, he's at 5,300. I probably would only look at that as a tournament play, and even then, not that strong. Dennis Smith's at 54. If Smith plays at 5,400. I think he's a tournament option, but I have my doubts that he's going to be able to go at full speed. Avery Bradley's at 3,900. He had a robust 0.75 DraftKings points last game in 30 minutes. I still don't think that that's a terrible GPP guy, but bear in mind his highest score for the entire season is only 31 points, so it's not like he's got a 50-point upside. I like Wes Matthews at 48, a solid cash guy with some upside here, while Doncic at 8,400. That's a big price for Doncic on DraftKings. If Smith is out, I think Doncic becomes a good option. If Smith is in, that might be just a little bit too highly priced. I like the pencil Harrison Barnes at $6,000, a positive matchup for him. He should be around that 32 point mark, which is a good value there, while Toby Harris at 7,800 is averaging 40 points over his last 3. Really strong, good floor, really like that spot, while the Rooster Danilo Gallinari at 36 also comes in as a pretty decent cash play. I like Harrell at 5,800, got back on track last game. Hopefully there's no issue here with his shoulder, which has been bothering him, of course, over the last few weeks or whatever it's been. DeAndre Jordan at 7,400. He had 54 the last time against his former team. It is a really positive matchup for DeAndre. I like him quite a bit here at 74. Gortat at 3,400 I think is a pretty strong fade option. On FanDuel, Barnes, Jordan, Gilgeous-Alexander, Wes Matthews, Toby Harris, Gallinari, and Doncic. I think they're all cash and tournament plays. I'm not as keen on Harrell over on FanDuel as I am for him on DraftKings, and Avery Bradley, of course, we're fading him pretty aggressively. The studs and values, not much happening because there's only the 2 games on. Chris Paul is my stud on DraftKings, and my value is PJ Tucker. On FanDuel, the stud is Chris Paul, and the value there is the pencil Harrison Barnes. On Yahoo, we're looking at James Harden at 56 and Kelly Olynyk as the value play. And then the stud play on Draft Stars is Harden, and the value play is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That'll wrap it up for today's show, guys. Make sure you are subscribing, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or on YouTube, where you can give a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. Also, get your smart speaker to play the podcast Locked On Fantasy Basketball, so you can never be without an episode of this fantastic show. Make sure you're checking out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Fast Break shows. Also, follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Robert Williams.